right, we're ready to go, Dr. Z?
You're good.
Thank you so much. And welcome, everyone. Please note the board convened an executive session prior to this public session to consider negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, the Taylor Law. We'd like to start by calling the meeting to order and saying the pledge, if folks could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now start with the approval of our minutes from December 16th, 2021, as well as December 22nd, 2021. Is there a motion? I see Lisa, and a second.
Second.
Thank you. Hold on just 1 second because I see our district clerk logging on. Hello, Ms. Campy, are you ready to go? Almost. Hello, Betty. You're good?
Hello.
All right. So we, did you catch the motion on the minutes?
I did not.
Okay. it
You
was
already
Lisa-
did that?
Lisa made the motion, and I'm sorry, who made the
Okay.
second?
Maria or Lisa or Angia. I think we
Okay.
All right. Okay. Any questions or comments on those 2 minutes? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We will now move on to the approval of the treasurer's report. These are 2 treasurer's reports, one from August 2021 and September of 2021. Is there a motion?
motion.
And second, thank you. Okay, any questions or commentary? Discussion. Okay, the only thing I will mention, you'll probably hear me mention this a little bit tonight, is these are all posted for the public on our board doc site for anyone who wants to go through and see. All in favor of approval of those 2 treasurers' reports? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, trustees. And we're moving on to our item number 5, which is the report of our superintendent, Dr. Dolan.
Thank you, Dave. Let me start by wishing everyone a healthy new year. As I've written to the community, that is as important a commodity as any these days, and I hope that everyone is now or will soon enjoy some good health. Predictably, much of my report tonight will focus on things medical. And let me start by commending the entire community, students, parents, staff, faculty, nurses, custodian, transportation staff, clerical staff, ground staff, administrators, and board members for what it has taken to keep us open. I do believe that staying open, unless we're compelled to close, is the correct course of action, and our attendance numbers seem to support that we are a needed and essential service. Upon request, I did collect attendance numbers for the week that just ended, and I'm pleased to report that our attendance was on average over 80% student attendance every day. The very first day that we came back, January 3rd, that was the lowest of the days, and we did have a couple of schools in the mid 70s. But by the end of the week, just to give you an idea, going across, high school 82, middle school 81, Glen Head 89, Glenwood Landing 87, and Seacliff 84%. How that compares to regular attendance, normally our attendance is probably in the mid 90s, 95, 96%. So it is certainly off, and there's no surprise there. We do have a lot of students who are ill, and we know that. I will also be collecting staff attendance numbers, and I will report those to the board next week. And if appropriate, I'll certainly report on those at the January 20th meeting. In terms of the buildings on a qualitative level, I was in every building at least once on Monday and most of them on Tuesday. And what I saw reinforced the decision to open. Students were engaged, teachers were active in their instruction, and administrators were necessarily visible. Some valid concerns have been raised about the fidelity of everyone wearing their masks, and I observed excellent but not perfect compliance. I need to remind everyone again of their personal responsibility to wear a mask, of their obligation to do so, and their additional responsibility to tell others to do so. I implored the staff to do so in an email I sent them on Monday, and I do so again now. When I was in the building, I certainly made it a practice and found lots of useful ways, simply sometimes by pointing at my own face and my own mask and pulling on it, of reminding students. And I was happy that students complied quickly and immediately whenever I asked them to. It's easy. While on the topic of keeping schools open, you may have already heard that the district will close tomorrow, Friday, January 7th, for weather conditions and the impact of COVID-19 on staffing. As I'm sure everyone knows, our staff has been stretched thin by this disease, especially this week. That includes our buildings and grounds department, upon whom we rely to clear the way into our school and our parking lots. Finally, as many other Nassau and Suffolk schools have closed, it would further create strain on our staff to be open tomorrow, and so we will have a snow day. There will be no remote instruction. Students can put their spoons away for another event. To be honest, I'd never heard that one before, to sleep with a spoon under your pillow. Save that one. And you can also, if you haven't heard this one, you can save the tradition of sleeping with your pajamas on inside out. I've heard that that's another way that some students have tried to ensure a snow day the following day. All taken care of. Over the break, schools and administrators were justified in feeling like a tennis ball as we were volleyed over a public policy net constantly. The governor made several pronouncements about home test kits, and we eventually received ours on Monday, January 3rd. We prepared them and a plan for delivery on January 5th, and we have now completed 2 days of delivery. My sincere thanks to John Hall, John Ahern, and Chris Zublionis for designing and implementing a plan to distribute almost 3,000 kits in 2 days. We will now inventory the balance left and develop a plan to make those available. As I said in my letter to the community, these kits are for personal use only. They cannot at this time be used to clear a student to return to school. If you use one and a positive result is revealed, please alert the school as you've done before and then follow up with your own medical provider. Another topic that was introduced just before the break and then became a talking point during it was a policy called Test to Stay. In short, this is a policy that would allow for asymptomatic students who have had a close contact with a person who has tested positive to avoid any quarantine time by taking an antigen test, and if a negative test is revealed, return to school immediately. And in order to discuss this, we need to deal with a topic I'm going to call dueling jurisdictions, and I do not think it will be the only time that I will use that phrase tonight. The CDC has developed this new test to stay protocol. The New York State Department has left it up to local health agencies to decide. Our local health agency, the Nassau County Department of Health, has not yet endorsed it because of the high level of contagion in Nassau County. However, the new county executive's office has indicated to us that it's up to school districts. Thus far, we have followed the instruction of the Nassau County Health Department, and we are trying to determine who has jurisdiction over this matter. But we will continue to follow the Nassau County Health Department as we have done very consistently with all of these regulations until we hear otherwise. If this is made an option for schools, we will examine it and determine if we can implement it. The variable will be whether we have sufficient nursing staff to clear students each morning prior to the start of the school day. At present, our heroic nursing staff is already stretched very thin, and I do not know what our capabilities would be. However, I repeat, we will explore the possibility once we are told whether this is an option for us or not. Similarly, the return of students to school via a PCR or antigen test is a topic that has been fluid as well. Until very recently, the Nassau County Department of Health has required a PCR to return. Now it appears that the Department of County of Health are reevaluating that requirement. This would allow students to return to school more quickly, as it is easier to get an antigen than a PCR test. Once we confirm this change in policy by the DOH and consult with our medical director, we will explore the change, as we have always wanted to get students back to school faster. I hope to have word to the board and the community on that item next week. We are further advised by our medical director that students returning to athletics require medical clearance to return to their teams. We will continue that, but are examining the degree to which this requirement is needed for physical education. COVID can, on some occasions, have cardiac implications, and we do not want to put any child at risk. For now, the DOH says that that rule is in place and will stay in place. We seek further clarification on phys ed. Another topic introduced in our COVID vocabulary was the debate over 5-day or 10-day quarantine. To be clear, this applies only to shortened quarantine periods for employees, not students. We are awaiting promised guidelines from the state specific to schools, but we are, as of now, maintaining the 10-day quarantine for employees. I believe that to be in the best interest of all, health-wise, at this time. I also received some requests from staff and communities over the break asking that the district establish locations where district residents can be tested for COVID or even vaccinated. This request is driven by the difficulty we are all having finding testing locations. We do have a vendor who provides mandatory testing to our employees who are not vaccinated, and we've asked them to extend their hours. While we believe they may be able to do so, their resources are limited as well, and the additional time will be as little as 2 hours per week. We will determine whether there are vacant testing slots open and determine how to allocate them. On this item, I must lower the community's expectation that the school district will be able to provide this health service. All medical facilities are stretched thin as we have ever seen them, and the district is unlikely to be able to do that which other agencies cannot, but we will try. And in today's news, I promised to return to the topic of dueling jurisdictions, and we saw today another lesson in that. As you may have heard, Nassau County Executive Blakeman has issued an executive order directing all Nassau County Boards of Education to vote publicly during the month of January to determine whether they will continue the mask mandate that was put in place for all New York State schools by the governor. The governor and Commissioner of Education both advised that the county executive does not have jurisdiction over schools. There's clearly a dispute here over who controls schools, and for now, I personally am not going to take sides. If the board were required to engage in such a vote, and I do not think we will, there is another meeting in January, but there is a serious question as to whether that will be necessary or not. We shall see and keep the community advised of our developments, and of course, follow the advice of our legal counsel. But I'm reminded of the African proverb that when elephants fight, it is only the grass that suffers. I'm not taking sides on the legal debate, but I do know that the time and energy we spend on this takes away from our primary mission. If we are compelled to rehash the issue, we will, but it will distract us from the other activities that schools are better equipped and obligated to complete. In the meantime, and pending any conversation that might take place at the January 20th meeting of the board, the mask mandate stays in place in our schools. And fortunately, that is consistent with the instructions of both the county executive and the governor, that until a conversation takes place, the mandate stays in place. Later in tonight's meeting, I might have one additional health-related comment related to contact tracing, but I will save that one just a few minutes. On other matters, I have some very good and exciting news to share with the district, and it is related to a singular student accomplishment. I'm honored to announce that Evelyn McCreary has placed in the top 300 of the Regeneron Science Competition and will move on to the next round. That is an extremely impressive accomplishment, and we all offer Evie our congratulations. Kudos also to her advisor, Dr. Mordecai, for all her hard work and determination. I'll tell you what Evie's topic was, but whenever I do this, I'm reminded how little I really know about science. Evie's topic was physiological effects of PET plastic teaching and polystyrene microsphere ingestion in wild-type Drosophila melanogaster. Perhaps one night we'll have Evie explain that to us. In the meantime, we wish Evie the very best of luck as she continues in the competition and in her future studies next year at Hamilton College, zip code 13323. In a few minutes, I will also be proud to introduce members of our music department who will offer us a recap on this winter's excellent performances. I hope everyone will stay tuned for that and other aspects of tonight's meeting. But that does conclude my report, and I'm happy to turn it back to President Ledmar. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Dolan. I appreciate that. I wanted to just add a couple things about this meeting. I know there's been some questioning of the meeting going remote, and I thought it was important to establish for the community that the goal of everything we're doing here is to keep our kids in school, and that's why the kids and the students being in school and our schools being open has always been our priority. We decided on Monday, when you look at the numbers in the in the county, and just huge positivity rates that we hadn't really seen at any other level of the pandemic, that it made sense to pivot this meeting to being remote. But it was done since Monday. And because we're going remote, we can't have some of the same interactivity and participation from the public that we normally do. And so we don't know what the pandemic will bring. We don't know what conditions will bring. But as we head to the January 20th meeting, I would implore folks who have public comments they want to share to please get them in by the Wednesday before the meeting, which would have been yesterday, so we can share those. But for those who did submit public comments later, which we're not going to be able to get to tonight, I did want to certainly assure everyone that they are read by all the trustees. And I also wanted to just comment, just in general, the last 24 hours have been a whirlwind. Really, the last 8 hours have been a crazy whirlwind of news coming from the county, trying to understand how the I don't have an analogy as eloquent as your elephant battle, but I will take the quote unquote battle between the governor and our county executive and the various other folks who have a say in our policy as they hash all of that out. I really would like to implore, of course, as the members of this board know, but also as our entire community knows, the schools throughout all of this, and it's coming on nigh 2 years now that we're going to be handling this. We have tried to be the lighthouse in the storm. We've tried to be the place of calm where people can come and can become educated and can be as safe as possible and try to follow those rules. When you do that, you generally end up upsetting a lot of people. And there's been so much upset in our community. Part of that is reflective of our world, and part of that is reflective of the community itself. But I really want to implore people to participate in viewing these meetings. These meetings are all recorded, and you can all watch them later. If you didn't have it, obviously, if you're hearing this now, you will be hearing it. But for those of you who may know people who didn't watch them, please direct them to go to the website. Please look and see what we do. And please also, as you have conversations with people around town, as you look at social media, which of course is a bit of a funhouse mirror reflection of what actually goes on in this town, I would really implore folks not to be sucked in by the most dramatic forces out there. And remember what we're doing here, which is to be calm, to follow the rules, to keep our kids in school and try to keep them as safe as possible and keep things going. So I thought that was important to mention as a compliment to the specific information that Dr. Dolan gave to us tonight, which I also appreciate on behalf of the board. With that, we would like to turn it over to me for the update on the superintendent search, which is actually very brief. Ads are going out, and now that the break is over, we are going to be in full swing on our recruitment efforts with our consulting firm, School Leadership. I've been in touch with them, and we are on schedule, and things are moving ahead as planned. So while there's no specific result or specific concrete updates to provide at this point, we are moving ahead towards our goal, which hopefully will bring us to where we want to get. With that, I will move on to the next action item or next report on our agenda, which is for Katie and Noah, who I believe are on the Zoom, to give us a report from the SGOs. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. We hope that you all had a safe and wonderful break. This past week, we were happy to work with the guidance department to invite North Shore alumni from the past 3 graduating classes to address our current senior body. The event was a great success as we reviewed in detail and with great insight the college experience as well as the necessary skill set to be successful in college. It was particularly gratifying as we collaborated with the student senior presidents to great success.
Right before break, the music department also put on the annual Cohen's Children's Hospital concert, which this year took place in a virtual live stream format. It was a very special event to be a part of, to get to spread holiday cheer to sick kids and their families. Additionally, the chorus students performed their annual caroling through the classrooms, which is one of my personal favorite North Shore traditions and definitely one of the traditions I will miss most next year.
We are also excited to say that we are preparing to have our annual senior play. This year's play will be an SNL-style show with funny skits throughout and even a musical guest. A group of very talented high school seniors are directing the play and are already hard at work scripting the skits and completing auditions. We are happy to say there is a lot of enthusiasm based around the show from our seniors. It should be a fun time and a good laugh.
And last but definitely not least, I think I speak for the vast majority of my peers when I say we are very excited for the snow day tomorrow. So thank you to all of you. And we hope that everyone stays safe in the storm tomorrow. Thank you and good night.
Thank you both. I certainly, speaking for the younger ones in my house, there's no question that a snow day was heavily anticipated. I received texts all throughout the day asking, I said, I don't know, stop texting me, I'm working. But there was a lot of excitement there. And I think there's something really nice about having a very traditional snow day, hopefully. I'm going to work tomorrow, so hopefully not entirely impassable, but certainly something that's safe, but also fun. And we all remember our child. Well, two of you are still living in your childhoods, but the rest of us remember our childhood and the joy and the fun of the sledding and the weather and the being too cold and realizing you let the snow inside your glove. It's going to be a great day. So have fun, and thank you both for being here tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I will now turn it over to Dr. Dolan for a winter performance recap with our administrative team.
Sure, I'm thrilled to do this. Originally on the agenda for tonight was part 2 of our AP IB conversation, but COVID kept a couple of us out and a couple of key members of that team. And I thank the board very much for giving us an extra 2 weeks to wrap up a report that I've had an opportunity to work on with some really outstanding administrators, and we're very anxious to get that report to you, and very proud of the work that we've done before and that we're continuing to do. At the last minute, I imposed upon Director of Fine Arts, Dalia Rodriguez, and called her and tentatively asked her if she'd be willing and able to put something together tonight to offer us kind of a recap of all of our winter performances. And she jumped at the chance, and I was so thrilled when she did. She saw it as a wonderful opportunity to showcase the department, a great chance to show off our ability to videotape some of these all of these concerts. And I think what you'll see tonight, although I haven't seen the presentation yet, is something that I've discovered, that many of us know lots and lots of musicians, and we see musicians perform and we hear them perform, and we even hear musicians talk about their art. And of course, we all know educators. We all meet educators all the time, and we hear educators talk about what it is to be a teacher and what it is to have a passion about teaching something and to someone. I've always thought that there's something very unique about music educators, and they really do take the best of both of those, the love of something fine in our lives and music, something that no celebration can be without, and they combine it with clearly what I think is one of the most noble tasks any of us can endeavor to achieve, and that is education. So to take those two and become a music educator is, I've always thought, something really special. And I know we're going to hear from some outstanding music educators tonight. But first, let me turn it over to the person who supervises all of them and who supervises not just the music portion of our program, but also the dramatic that you just heard about and the fine arts. And that is our director of fine arts, person I'm happy to work with, and that is Dalia Rodriguez. Dalia, you're on.
I had to unmute myself, of course.
No problem, Dalia. I almost said a bad word because
And start the video.
that I had just given that whole speech to no one. So
Take
I
two.
did catch myself before I said a bad word live. So great, you're on, Dalia.
Tom, I was just thinking that would have been a great moment for a drum roll, but okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Next time, guys.
Well, first of all, Dr. Dolan, thank you so much for reaching out and inviting me to speak tonight. It is truly an honor to speak about our wonderful winter performances and to share our work with you tonight. Before I begin, though, I really want to take this opportunity to briefly share the context for what made these wonderful performances possible. And it really is grounded in our department mission, where we really believe that in order to create an environment, we want to create an environment that really fosters artists that can collaborate, innovate, articulate, and create. And a lot of our work is grounded in this mission, in this philosophy. Speaking about that, we're going to have some wonderful students. You're going to be hearing some wonderful students speak about their work. Specifically, they're going to share with you what it means to be in a music ensemble. And as you're hearing their words, I want you to carefully listen to how the SVOs are represented in what they're saying. So take a listen.
How has being in an ensemble impacted you as a student or person?
Well, being in an ensemble has offered me the chance to really express myself with a family that I really, really love. I think that being in an ensemble, it's a place where we all tell a story together by interpreting a composer's intent. And when we tell a story and you feel that, it's a magical feeling. And it's something that I always love to do whenever I'm in an ensemble.
Being in an ensemble has impacted me as both a student and a person, really by giving me this outlet for creativity and teaching me about emotional communication. It's a way of relating with people on a nonverbal level, which can really be a lot more powerful than, just going through your conversations in day-to-day life. And it's also taught me a lot about leadership. It's presented me with some opportunities that I just couldn't pass up, and it's been really fun just getting to work with my peers and putting together projects and concerts and, being Tri-Am president and just working with people to further the goal of the music department, which is really to make good music and have fun and just really relate to each other.
Being in an ensemble has impacted me in several different ways. I feel like probably the biggest way is that it's taught me genuinely just how to communicate with people and how to kind of adapt my ways of thinking and of just interacting with people so that I can communicate better with them. Every Thursday I get to teach this wonderful group of people music, and I just lead the ensemble, and that's really helped me in just knowing how to talk to people and knowing how to relate to them and just getting to people. And it's a really cool experience because not only am I teaching them music, I feel like I'm connecting to them as people through the music, which is really, really cool.
So I want to just take a moment to really talk about very quickly how well-rounded our students are at North Shore, and you heard it there. You heard some examples of that. But I want to say that I would love the music department to take full credit for that. But it is because we offer so many opportunities for our students at North Shore, and we offer a well-rounded education, and I'm so thankful for that. And that is because of the work all the curriculum directors do with the principals and the central office and with parents and teachers. It really does take a community, and I'm just seeing that. Every time I see that, I just become so proud. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the framework we are using in the department, that the framework that really guides our work. And this is where it happens, right? So we have been focusing on innovative thinking since the inception of the SVOs, really, at North Shore. And we did a lot of research, and I'm so thankful that, and we are so fortunate that North Shore School District really values professional growth, because that has really helped us to really think about what we do deeply and in meaningful ways. And so the work we did really focused on innovation. And we needed to think about how to do that in the classrooms, which is really, was very challenging. But we got there. And we turned our focus, we tweaked it to really focus on cultivating innovative thinkers. And in our research, we found 7 characteristics that really foster that. And they are, I'm going to show them to you in a second. So the first one is reflective learner, commits to process, and integrates knowledge, creative problem solver. They are collaborative, effective communicators, and take risk. Now, if you look at these, you're going to notice that these are really reflective of each of our SVOs. And so in noticing that in our work, it really truly informed our methods and our approaches to teaching and learning in the arts. And so that has really been the framework that we have used in our curriculum. and in the lessons that are implemented every day in our classrooms. And this is really the behind the scenes of what happens in the arts and what allows us to do the wonderful work and the wonderful events that everyone gets to see. Not everyone gets to see the hard work in the classrooms, but it is grounded in this framework right here. So I wanted to share it with you because I think it would really help you appreciate the work that teachers and students do to make those events possible. So speaking of events, I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about why do we celebrate students' accomplishments? You know, the why really informs the what. So a reason we do that is because it helps create a sense of pride and joy. Another reason is because it builds students' confidence. It creates community. It's the culmination of their learning. It's performance-based art. I mean, sorry, it's performance-based assessment. Everything is art. And it most definitely aligns with New York State learning standards for the arts and with our district's goals. So that's the why, but there's more to it. I want to connect this now back to the SVOs. When we were thinking about the work we're doing in the classrooms, we had to start thinking about how this is reflected, the SVO work is reflected, and the district's goals is reflected in our events. So we started shifting our thinking about creating events towards creating experiences. And that's when the aha moment happened for us at North Shore. We started thinking about creating these experiences and how our values are reflected in those experiences. So they're not just going to a concert, you are going to have an experience. And when you walk away from that experience, it's gonna live with you for a while. And that's what really we wanted to achieve. And we started that work prior to the pandemic, and this is how we did it. Prior to the pandemic, if you attended any of our concerts, you saw projections, collaborations, integration of art and poetry, integration of dance, integration of technology. Now the pandemic really forced us to think outside the box. I mean, we really had to. So we really had to lean on that innovation even more than usual. And, you know, because I have great teachers in the department who are willing to collaborate and take risk and really do care about students and about teaching, as Dr. Dolan said before, combining teaching with music and art and dance and theater, we were able to do the following during the pandemic. We were able to create wonderful, beautiful documentaries that allow students to talk about the power of music. Our youngest musicians did pop-up performances. We had virtual performances as well at the secondary level, and we had this beautiful outdoor concert under the stars where collaboration was also highlighted there. This year we did the video recordings of performances, and all of this involved cross-disciplinary collaborations. And I'm really, truly proud of the work that the teachers and students in collaboration with myself and with the support of parents and the community, we've been able to achieve this during perhaps one of the most challenging times we've ever experienced. So that all being said, I want to introduce to you two music teachers, two talented music educators who played a big role in supporting this effort and in moving our district goals forward, and who embody the SVOs themselves. And that is Ms. Jody Larson, a Seacliff Elementary Band director, and Mr. Jason Domingo, our high school orchestra director. And Ms. Larson is gonna start first, and she's gonna share her perspective.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for allowing me to give you some of my thoughts on this subject. I've been in the North Shore District for 18 years teaching elementary band, and initially our SVO was innovation, and that was tough for me because we're such a skill base. I teach grades 3, 4, and 5 skilled band instruments, and so innovation was tough. But then when it got tweaked to become innovative thinkers, well, that opened up all these different avenues for us, and it allowed the students to get involved. And we began to teach not only musicians, but we also began to teach thinkers. And that was a different experience for us. And we did it through open-ended, thought-provoking questions or student-led problem solving for them, or we taught through analogy or imagery. And as we, as collaborators, began to speak, my colleagues and I, about thinking outside of the box, this all trickled down as our creativity evolved to the students. And as Dahlia had mentioned, we had a bunch of things in the elementary, ideas and experiences that really were successful. The first was The Power of Music, a documentary that happened right at the beginning of the pandemic when we were in the heart of it. And the students and the teachers, we were filmed, and we were to talk about how we felt about having music during this pandemic. And it ended up being such a heartfelt, warm, honest, raw documentary where everyone really expressed how much the music meant to them and how it was a release from such a stressful, uncertain environment that everyone was living in. And it was lovely. And then in the spring last year, we had these PUP concerts, which stands for pop-up performances. And it was an informal concerts that we had created. The students learned duets, trios, small ensemble pieces. We advertised it for 6 days out on the blacktop. Whoever would like to come for from the school, it was a school-based performance. And we went out there, and for 6 days, I'm going to tell you, the blacktop was packed. I mean, I would look out and it seemed like every single class was there. And they came to each performance twice a day. It was wildly accepted, loved, a lot of accolades, and it made the kids feel great. We felt we were giving back. The students needed it, and it was a wonderful experience. And then the last thing that we just did recently was the recorded concerts. And we started the ensembles this year. So we were back on track in the early morning ensembles, and we were working towards a goal of a concert, but the logistics of keeping everyone safe created this idea of a recorded concert. And so the students dressed up. We went to the high school, we were bused there. We were under the big lights in the big stage of the high school, and they performed. They really learned not only performing for the first time because they had been sidetracked with the pandemic, they learned to perform. They performed for their peers. They listened to what it was like to perform when you had an audio recorder and a visual recorder for this recording. And in the end, we had a recording that was a keepsake that parents had, students had, extended family that couldn't have come had. So there were so many silver linings that we were able to obtain. And this happened through reflective practicing, collaboration, problem solving, thinking, all those wonderful SVOs. And as a result, the students had experiences that I don't think they would have had not all come about. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. Thank you for sharing. Mr. Domingo?
Hi, Dahlia. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and board, good evening. Thank you so much for having us. Very grateful to have this opportunity to say thank you directly and publicly, because to echo what President Ludmar mentioned a few minutes ago, North Shore has been the lighthouse in the storm for the past 2 years, because you've preserved my ability to support my students and continue to inspire them with musical experiences. So anything that I could follow up the previous presentation that we're part of right now, it's already been really well articulated by Dahlia, by Jody, by my students. So I just want to take an opportunity to say thank you. If you haven't met me yet, I am the high school orchestra director, very proud of my job title. And while the job becomes very complex, especially in regards to concert logistics, I always simplify what my job is, because my job is to simply inspire students, which happen to be music students. And I'm very grateful to have that opportunity. And I felt nothing but support before the pandemic and throughout the pandemic. We've always remained flexible and ready to make sure that our students are getting exactly or the best to what we can offer them for what they need to put on these performances, have these experiences, and then really create their own wealth of motivation through that validation that you get from a public performance. So thank you again, and thank you for the opportunity for this recorded concert that you're about to see some highlights from.
Thank you, Jason. And so now we are going to show you the highlights of our winter performances, and I hope you enjoy them as much as we enjoyed being a part of them.
Parents, we are so delighted to be performing for you today. Our first piece is called the D major scale.
Part of being an artist is we do, this is how you become an artist, ready? Create, reflect, repeat. That's it, it's the whole thing. I'm very excited to take a look at this high-def, high-quality audio where we get to see some professional camera angles and management of pro equipment so we can really see what we're doing. I hope camera technicians that we're zooming in, of course, on left-hand technique, so when we need to make an adjustment, we can make that adjustment. But seriously, that's what's going to happen next week. So.
So I just want to end by saying thank you so much. This work cannot be possible without the support of our board and our central office administration. And of course, I've already said our brilliant teachers. But truly, we're so fortunate to work in a district that really does value the arts and has always done so. And I couldn't be more honored to be here and work for a district that really, really stands by what it says. So thank you.
Dahlia, thank you so much. That was a fantastic, I mean, I won't say it's my favorite board meeting I've ever been to, but certainly in terms of what we were just able to see, it's a tier one board meeting. That was fantastic. That video was on in my house frequently, and it was really, really fantastic. The quality of it, the quality of the music was just fantastic. I want to give a chance for any other trustees who wanted to add any thoughts. Please, Trustee Jones.
I'm happy to. I'm so overwhelmed with what our arts department has been able to produce under the conditions that we've had to work with. Like with the winter concerts, just the most beautiful performances we've seen, with what you did last spring with the outdoor concerts, and just whatever the circumstances are, the extent to which the arts department has come together and produced just tremendous performances. And it's not even the performance. Like, we all enjoy the performance, but it's not just that. The experience that you've given the students throughout the pandemic, which we see culminating in these performances, it's just astonishing. I can't express enough gratitude for the work of the arts department that we've seen here. Just thank you.
Andrea, then Maria.
I mean, that was amazing. There is so much we have to be proud of here at North Shore, and that is the best of the best, what we just saw. And I'm continually amazed, and I'm not sure why I'm amazed, because it always happens when we hear from students speak about their experiences. There is something so quintessential North Shore, which is they are so articulate, poised, and reflective. Yes. They are wise beyond their years. And those three students that you featured, I mean, it was really amazing how they spoke about the arts department. It's not just playing an instrument or learning an instrument. It's so much more than that, as they spoke about. I too was shocked about how beautiful the video concerts were. And it's not that it's better or worse. It just was a different experience this semester. And there were some really nice things about having it captured on video. One being that the children were able to watch themselves perform. And we were able to watch it many times. And we were able to watch it in different places with different people. And you know, I don't know how cost prohibitive it is going forward, but it would be so nice to be able to have both live concert and videoed concerts in the future, because as you said, it is about creating an experience, and the district is doing it really well. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Trustee Muska.
Yeah, oh boy, it makes us giddy, I think. So we all want to just give you a standing ovation. I really just bravi to everyone. Dahlia, you and all your colleagues. I'm so happy we got to hear from Jody and Jason tonight too. But seeing all the other conductors there and again, to echo what Andrea said, how well spoken your students are, our students, just really, really impressive. And thank you for bringing so much joy to us and actually bringing to life through those videos the power of music for all the district. Thank you very much.
Lisa?
Well, I just want to echo what my fellow trustees said. It was amazing. It was just wonderful to watch as a parent, as a trustee. And I really loved the connection to the SBOs, because I think, just going back to that, Dahlia, in your presentation, and also Jody mentioned it as well with, innovative thinkers. I think that's so important and really says so much about what is important to our district. And then we see the end result, and it's just wonderful. And and even what Jason said about feeling supported and, again, professional growth, it's so important, and it's all for the children. And we see just, again, how well-spoken they are and how talented they are. And I just want to say thank you, because it was just wonderful to watch.
Mary Ann, please.
I just want to thank you for a nice trip down memory lane. So it was good. I missed the concerts, and it was a real treat for me to see it. And it's always amazing, whether it's on the videotape or whether it's in person. And it certainly has carried over beyond North Shore, what you give the foundation for here in my children's life, and I'm sure in many graduates of North Shore Life and that life. And you can see that when you go to these concerts and you see, when we're in person, how many alumni come and they bring their instruments and they get up on the stage and they play sleigh rides. So it's important work, not just for now, but for when they're for life. So thank you.
Thank you, Marion. And we miss you too at our concerts.
I'll be back after COVID.
Good.
Thanks, Mary Ann.
Thank you so much. That was really wonderful. And I just want to echo what my fellow trustees have said. Arts at North Shore have always been outstanding, and it's truly something that our students carry on for their entire lives. I know my own 4 children got a lot out of it, and to this day, it still means a lot to them. And some of their most vivid memories and wonderful memories come from what they've done in that department. So thank you so much.
Thank you, trustees. I just want to add from my own perspective, Ms. Larson, I had a couple comments written down for myself coming into this, but I thought you put it best, kind of drawing the distinction between innovation in and of itself and the idea of being an innovative thinker. I think that's sort of a metaphor for what we've had to do these last 2 years, all of us, all the hundreds of people that work in our district, all the students, the families, everyone. We could not do things the way we've always done them before. I don't know if you remember when they did a kickoff speech at the beginning of last year. I spoke to the faculty about the idea of, yes, this is not where we want to be, but that it is an opportunity as well to relearn and to rethink and to do things in a different way. And I think that's something that North Shore was ready for and always has been. This is not a place where we jam the my size foot into a glass slipper. This is a place where we make a new footwear. We figure out new way to do it. And those concerts, so there was a lot of consternation about these concerts. And I'm not just talking about, like, there's some people who weren't happy that we weren't doing it exactly the way they wanted. And there's always a big, screaming and yelling on social media. But there was concern about what it would be, people missing their kids and missing seeing them. But to be able to craft this, it's such a great lesson for us as a community that have a little patience and have a little grace, that this arts department, which has done so much for our students, with our students for so many years, is going to come through with something that could be so meaningful. Yes, it's different than a live concert, but I've never seen the kids' fingers on a trumpet moving the way they have. I've never seen the tapping of the feet. I've never seen the syncopation of the bows. I've never seen the way the kids, no matter where I sat, the way their eyes are looking at their sheet music, looking at the conductor, looking down, and just are so in the moment. It was just emblematic of everything we're trying to do. It was so powerful. I literally thought, oh, I'll watch my kid. Where is he? And I watched all the performances, and I watched them more than once, and I showed them to other family members. It was such a proud moment for North Shore. And I look forward to so many more. Such a great thing. I can't say enough, but I will stop, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Dr. Dolan? Yes.
Just to thank Dahlia for putting this together on somewhat short notice. I really appreciate it, Dahlia. And to our 2 teachers, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you in other performances as well. Thanks a lot for doing this.
You're welcome. Our pleasure.
Thank you so much. I would say normally you have to go to bed early because it's a school day tomorrow, but it's not a school day tomorrow.
I took care of that. Yeah, I took care of that.
But again, we appreciate your time. You're certainly welcome to view from the comfort of your homes. But you're also free to enjoy the rest of your evening. And with that, we will turn it over to the next portion of our meeting. And just thanking you again so much for your time and for your efforts on behalf of all the students and families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. An honor and a privilege. Have a great night.
And to all the folks who weren't here tonight, please, I hope they're watching or at least hearing how appreciative we are of the entire music department. Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
We will now move on to comments in the public, which, as I mentioned, when we have our remote meetings, we do request that comments in the public are submitted by 5 p.m. the day before. So we will move on to action item 10, which is the personnel section of our agenda. Is there a motion on action item 10, letters A through I?
Motion.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion, comments? Yes, Maria, please. You're muted. There you go. You're muted now. Good.
Sorry, Dave.
No, you're good.
Trying to find my notes at the same time. Just had a really quick question, clarification. Forgive me. I'm sorry, we're on item 10, A through I, you said, right?
Yes.
So just again, just a definition for me on letter F as in Frank. What actually, I'm not familiar with the term non-certified.
Sorry, Tom, you are muted.
Sorry. Two classifications of employees, those that have a certificate from the state and those that do not. Non-certificated would be clerical, for example, custodial. Certificated would be administrative and teaching assistant.
Okay, thank you so much.
Other questions or comments on this section? Okay, I had just two myself. First of all, I wanted to highlight letter A, which is the appointment of Ms. Amy McKee as the Assistant Director of Special Education. This has been a journey for the district over the last year and a half, and I'm excited at this appointment. I really want to thank the administration for being flexible. I certainly want to thank our SEPTA community, who has always advocated for all kids in this district, to ensure that the administration was working with them and being a great partner in this as we move forward with this. And I'm excited about this. And the other thing I wanted to mention was letter G, which is we're approving a per diem rate for our substitute nurses. Dr. Dolan mentioned it earlier, but it is a good opportunity just to thank just an extra moment out to thank our nursing staff for what they've done. On hours, after hours. I know many of them personally, and the care that they have for the students of this district and for the welfare of this community in general is so beyond a 7 to 3 job. They are working so hard for us. Anyone who needs to hear about the nobility of nursing as a profession probably needs to hear it from more than just me, but it is worth noting how much they've been doing and continue to be on the front lines. I want to thank them all, and I also want to just let Ms. Leader know at Glen Head that we are working hard to get that new suite renovation as well. It's been in the works for a long time, but at some point you're going to move into the 21st century and get some new facilities, so we're excited about that as well. Any other questions on personnel? Comments? All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action 11, which is the approval of our claims audit report for November of 2021. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Okay, and I see some seconds. I'm sure Betty has it. Thank you. Any questions or comments on this? Maria, please.
I'm sorry. This is just a comment. I had to call out and commend Olivia on this one again. Error percentage in dollars, 0.002%. Another phenomenal. I'm finally starting to understand these things, and it's pretty darn impressive. Thanks, Olivia.
Thank you. It's a team effort. We have very good people and very good staff in the business office, and they all chip in, including everybody in central office.
It is that team effort. I know, Marie, you say you're getting it certainly with music, but in learning in general, repetition is a key. And so month after month, when we have these reports, for the record, just to go into that number, it's not 2% error rate. It's not 0.2% error rate. It's not 0.02% error rate. It's 0.002.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it was $173 out of $7.165 million in checks that we wrote. And that 173 wasn't missing $173. It wasn't that it was written to the wrong person. It was just a date code of the purchase order versus the invoice. So, there's no shortage of impressiveness from that entire office, Olivia, and you are allowed to take a little credit for it. But I appreciate also your mention of your good team. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Other questions about the audit report? All right, thank you, Maria. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action item 12, which is the approval of budget transfers. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. In a second. Lisa, thank you. Questions on the budget transfers? All in favor? Aye. Action 13, which is the approval of contracts, A, B, and C. Is there a motion? Thank you. I see Lisa, Maria. Excuse me. And questions on any of these? No, Tom, I was wondering if you could just tell us just a little bit about A.
Yeah, I would have said something after it was approved. Hope
Okay.
I don't mess it up. For the
Little
last-
chance, Tom.
Good. For the last 20 months or so, our nurses and our principals have been engaged in what's called contact tracing. I really did not have a scope of how much that involved until I got here this year, not having had to do it last year. Contact tracing means that every single student or adult who tests positive, we need to figure out where they've been, who they've been with, how far away, for how long, and then make some very difficult phone calls to parents in the event that there's been a close contact and a child or an adult needs to quarantine. What I just described nowhere near begins to do it justice, because that doesn't end at 3:00 in the afternoon, as you can imagine. And it doesn't end at Friday afternoon when we leave for school. I've certainly been involved in enough Saturday and Sunday morning and afternoon conversations and evening conversations with our principals who are making decisions and making tough phone calls. They've been doing it for the last 20 months, and I have advised the board that it is beginning to impact their practice. It's keeping them from doing that which we hope our principals are going to do. It hasn't impacted them yet because they've kept going. They've done everything we've asked them to do. But looking at models from some other districts have utilized services, including agencies, as we propose to do now, to do the contact tracing. Our principals and nurses will assist me beginning at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning in a handoff to Horizon Healthcare, an organization that we've had a very good working relationship with. And in fact, I'm speaking to their local CFO and CEO tomorrow about how we're going to do this. Individuals will be assigned to each building to do the contact tracing. And over the next few weeks, parents can expect to hear perhaps a different voice, but one that we will insist be as caring and compassionate and attentive to detail as our principals and our nurses have been. So before I end, just let me say one more time how much I appreciate what our nurses and our principals have done. I didn't mention New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve, but I know at least two of them that were on the phone on Christmas Eve as their family celebrated, and they were on the phone doing contact tracing. They need and deserve an opportunity to get away from that a little bit, and this will afford them that. Thank you, Dave.
No problem, Tom. I apologize for not letting you know in advance that I was going to ask that question, but I know from speaking to you
ready.
about this and the raison d'etre for this in the first place, that you would be prepared for it. Sarah?
Yeah, and I just want to add, I think the contact tracing contract is incredibly important to do. But at no small expense. This could run, I think, $10,000 a month, but it's important to the health of our students, and it's the way forward at this point.
Thank you. Other comments on this? Any of these three contracts? All right, all in favor of 13A, B, and C? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Action 14, which is the approval of a special education services contract with Herrick's. Is there a motion? Rich, thank you. And Marianne, second, I see. Any comments or questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. We now move on to the old business section of our meeting. Is there any old business for trustees? Lisa?
I just wanted to follow up on the construction steering meeting that we had earlier in the week. There were a few questions that we had raised during the meeting, so I just wanted to follow up. One was we were talking about the number of students identified by the Univents. Well, the number of students in the rooms, I guess, identified by the balancing and testing report that had issues with the Univents, and the other was putting extra HEPA filters in the cafeterias and other large spaces.
I'm not sure if, I don't think John is with us, and it would have been John who eventually would have done this. I think the construction steering committee was Tuesday, which was my last day. As people might know, I'm isolated at home right now. We've not collected the data on the number of students identified, but I do recall that that was a task that we agreed to take on. I don't think that's been done yet, unless someone else who's on the call with us wants to indicate that it has already happened. Okay, so it is still on our to-do list. It was assigned on Tuesday, and I would hope that we'll be able to identify the number of students impacted by those spaces, hopefully next week.
Could someone elaborate? It can be me if you like, more about the issue that we're facing with the lack of filtration or ventilation in most of our large spaces and the number of classrooms that are impacted by Univents that need repair so that we have adequate ventilation there?
I can certainly speak to the first one, Sarah, because I've become very conversant with it over the last several months. The large spaces that we rely upon, cafeterias, auditoriums, spaces like that, do not have adequate ventilation. And I'm not going to say under normal circumstances, but I am going to say certainly under these circumstances in a COVID environment. There is a plan in place to enhance them. I think at Tuesday's meeting, people heard the dollar figure that was associated with that. It's a hefty one. If Olivia can speak to the financing of it, I think we could probably wrap up the large spaces, and then I'll defer to somebody else on the classrooms.
Yeah, we got the upper grant last year, and part of it was allocated to buy the big HEPA filters for the large spaces. John Hall and I are working on it. In fact, he put together the Jeremy from Stantec was supposed to put together the cut sheet, and he and John Hall are going back and forth about that. But that's a temporary measure for the cafeterias. What John Hall did was that he located a few HEPA filters that we had in the basement, and he has already placed them in the cafeteria in particular. I think our focus was regarding the cafeteria, and that's where we want to pay the attention, because that's where we feel most kids gather and they take off their masks. So that's why we were into that during the construction steering committee meeting. So he's taking the first step. He's gotten some help from downstairs. We've located a number of HEPA filters and put it in the cafeteria. The next step is to get the cut sheet and order the right size, bigger HEPA filters for the cafeteria. And that's what we are working on.
So in the interim, are there steps we need to take to make sure our school community, our staff, our faculty, et cetera, understand the limitations that we do have in our large spaces? Because I think people may well believe that we have more robust ventilation or filtration in some of the large spaces than we do.
Yes.
And so people are making decisions about having phys ed inside versus outside, or what to do about lunch or recess, believing all of our spaces are equally ventilated and filtrated when we know for fact cafeterias, gyms, auditoriums, to some extent libraries, are not as well ventilated or filtrated, meaning outside air intake, HEPA filter filtration is not happening there. And now that the weather is much more difficult, I don't know that everyone has enough information to make decisions on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, not to skirt the issue, but John Hall was also waiting for the report from Stantec. And now that we have it, we have a roadmap to use to come up with all kinds of strategies to inform our staff as to what we are going to do. And some of this also depend on the financing. When we spoke about it in our construction steering committee, we came up with all kinds of ideas because the estimate that we got for some of this is pretty large. And so if we're going to do it, it requires a lot of planning and a lot of budgeting. And we talked about a few of those at the construction steering committee last Tuesday. So we can only do so much because we only have about 100. Yes, we have just about $100,000 in the upper grant. That
I absolutely understand that. I absolutely understand the limitations and how hard it is to get to where we need to be. So I'm saying in the interim, how do we inform the people that are impacted by this where the limitations lie?
We're going to work on it.
I do not want everyone to believe that we have perfect ventilation and filtration in place in every space when we do not.
Okay.
Particularly during this peak. So how do we deal with it? How do we deal with that? How do we get that information out? Because I don't think it's out there. And what gets even trickier is we have classrooms that are impacted by univents that need to be repaired but have not been. And I don't think people know where those are. And then further, we have the issue of, we have a lot of routines in place to keep our students safe about cracking windows, running the HEPA filters, which windows should be open or not open, where the HEPA filter should be placed so that air doesn't get short cycled. But we also have a tremendous number of substitutes in the building, right? So we don't necessarily have, and we're very short on custodial staff because of absences. So we don't have as robust a plan as we normally would. So while we are working to fix the physical infrastructure, what can we do to make sure all of these spaces are safe and that everyone, substitutes, et cetera, understand the limitations of their space and what they can do to make that safer?
I think that's part of what we were looking at on Tuesday, because there are some spaces that will eventually get the UV. There are some spaces where that's not possible.
Eventually, we've been talking
Eventually,
about it for a year and
but
a
there
half.
are, you did let me finish. So we are looking at what we should be purchasing. And part of the conversation is, do we purchase large HEPA filters that would be difficult to use in a different space, or do we purchase more smaller HEPA filters for those spaces with the intent that they could be used elsewhere to supplement. And it also depends on the space, right? So, you know, you have some spaces that are performance spaces like auditoriums, and some places that are gathering eating places like cafeterias. So noise becomes an issue as well. So Jeremy had the report for us on Tuesday with the recommendations, and John was going to price out the large units for the cafeteria area and see if it was possible to get some smaller units. He went, as Olivia said, he mentioned that we had some HEPA filters that were not being used. So we put those out, and now we have to see with those in play what needs to be supplemented. So it's in the works. I would say you'll probably have some resolution for the temporary spaces within the next couple of weeks or so, depending on how fast we can get the HEPA filters, right?
Yeah, some of them have already been done, actually. So we just have to get the cut sheet and order the bigger ones. And that's what John Hall is working on.
And did send us a report. Again, I think the construction steering committee was on Tuesday, but I did receive a report from John on Thursday with an updated list of the spaces that were discussed, as well as what the plan is for replacement. I can certainly send this home to the board to give you an idea of what we've accomplished already. We are working on it, and I will accept, Sarah, the responsibility of the educational component of it that I hear loud and clear. I think the principals, Don Lang, Dahlia, some of those people who work in those large spaces, we can certainly engage in an educational effort to make people be aware of the imperfections of some of those large spaces, because I don't think anybody should assume that they're perfect. They're not. That's why we're working on them, but we can do a better job of educating people, and I'll accept the responsibility for that.
Andrea, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to add this one thing about lunch and recess. Like, I know in the past, decisions about whether children stayed indoors or went outdoors really had to do with the temperature, with wind chill. So I'm curious if that's the same standard we're using today, or we've adapted because of the increasing COVID rates. Because I know Monday and Tuesday, I believe they stayed inside. And
I know they didn't, because I got at least one phone call from a parent who objected to the fact that her child was out. We're using a real field temperature of 32, which we feel is about as low as we can go reasonably. If you recall, in the letter that I sent home to parents announcing that we were opening, I did advise people that we were going to use outdoor spaces more, and thought that would serve as a warning to parents to bundle up a little bit. We are still sending kids out. The three elementary principals met with Don Lang and established that real feel of 32. So, and we did have one building, honestly, that was not utilizing outside quite as much. And we took care of that to make sure that we were being consistent across the district. So I believe we are still using it. And I know it was on Monday that I got a phone call with somebody upset that we were using it, that we were sending kids outside.
I think I appreciate that, Tom. I think the description we had of our construction steering meeting was helpful, but it's really two components, right? It's the physical piece, and then it's also within the map you have of your buildings, you know, the places that potentially are more vulnerable. And so making sure that everyone within a building is on the same page and potentially not funneling people to the more vulnerable spots, but funneling them away or redirecting efforts, I think is the point you were going for, Sarah, right?
Yes, thank you. For everyone, and I think the public too, watching this, so that the staff is clear and the public is clear, that is the physical education department aware of the limitations of their spaces? Are parents aware of the limitations of the cafeteria spaces? So that everyone can make better decisions, because we really do have significant limitations. It can be true that we are working as hard as we can to improve the ventilation and filtration in all these spaces. And yet it is still true that right now, where we're having this unprecedented peak in positive cases, that people need as much information as possible to make decisions about what to do indoors and outdoors, and cracking windows and making sure the HEPA filters are running and making sure substitutes, etc., know best how to deal with the situation. Because apparently we are significantly short-staffed, so we can't expect that we are able to do the CO2 readings that we would have done in the past to verify the ventilation and filtration. And it's not great in some places.
But Sarah, I'm curious, what would it like? So yes, I agree with everything you're saying. How do you think, do you have an idea of what you think the best approach would be to communicate that?
No, I really don't know. I really think that is pretty much falls squarely on Dr. Dolan's shoulders to be like, this is where we have shortfalls in our ventilation and filtration.
And therefore, whenever you get an opportunity to use a more appropriate space, including the outdoors, this is why we want you to do so. It's almost a rationale for, you know, what we've asked people to do.
Right, because like the middle school not using outdoors for, you know, lunch or recess this week is, because that cuts both ways, right? When you keep kids inside, they don't get the benefit of being outside in that air, but you also don't give the air in the building time to recover from the ventilation and the filtration.
So that speaks to, as Tom just said, and I just want to follow up on Andrea's comment, that it does speak to trying to emphasize that the outdoors should remain a viable option and should be encouraged and should be, you know, emphasized as, you know, as in reminders to people that it is, you know,
that it is
important.
And I'm wondering if there's some flexibility there that, like, let's say at the middle school, for example, you have kids that really do think it's too cold to go outside for recess, but you have some kids that would be perfectly happy to go outside. Any ability to have some flexibility and let some kids outside is going to help the air in the building.
It will. We are experiencing some staffing restrictions right now.
Absolutely.
It's a little hard. It's a little harder, not impossible, but a little harder. And just to clarify something I said before, the temperature that I cited, we agreed upon at the elementary school. I do think the middle school might have been in this week. I don't know if the temperature, what was happening there, but I do know I can vouch for the elementary schools. I'll follow up on the middle school, certainly.
Thank you. Is there other old business that folks would like to present or re-present?
I wanted to check in on trips, where we were with overnight ski trips, where we were with trips to countries the CDC has level 4, etc.
Be happy to. I do have some news, not on all of them. You hear the pause because I don't want to say something that perhaps students don't know yet, but one of our foreign trips is being canceled. We are going to inform people about that. Another one, we are looking at a delay from winter to spring to see if things are better. Costa Rica, as of now, is still on. I've just kind of given away some of the other information, and I'm in conversation with Seth about that. Ski trip was originally scheduled, I believe, for January 22nd, and I've been in conversation with Mr. Granieri, and we're looking at the possibility of postponing the January 22nd one and waiting to see how things look in February. So there were 4 trips, and cheerleading. Cheerleading did qualify for the Nationals down in Florida, and that entitles them to go to Walt Disney World. The last I heard, that one was still on because it is a competition. But I'll be happy to maintain updates on all 5 of those trips. Those are the 5 that I've been keeping my eye on.
Thank you. Other old business? Okay, we'll move on to new business. Trustee
New
Rizzo,
business.
Please.
So we were talking in construction steering about any number of projects, and of course, the constant refrain was funding source, right? I mean, there are a lot of things we'd like to do that we can't do within the confines of the budget. We had a capital reserve last year that did not pass for certain projects. I was wondering if the board would like to look at putting together, not putting out the same capital reserve, obviously, but putting out another capital reserve. There's always a list of things that need to be done. Look at the Glen Head sinkhole that we had. We have some underground storage tanks. We have the track and field that we now know is ending its useful life. And I was wondering if there was any kind of feeling that the board may want to look at having construction steering create a list of possible projects to include in a capital reserve. I am concerned that let's hope this is a problem, that we get maybe money in from FEMA or some other aid that we're not anticipating now that comes in like we had this year. We had aid and money come in after we've already set the budget. And it ended up going into the TRS reserve. And we didn't really anticipate having that much money to go into reserves. And the budget had already closed, so you couldn't put it towards the budget, the current budget. So we had to put it in reserves. And I just look at this list all the time and in construction steering, and it's concerning to me when we are trying to budget more leanly, when we quite frankly aren't really looking to do reserves, but we may have funds that come in that we will need to put in a reserve, and rather putting it in an existing reserve that maybe doesn't directly benefit the students. I mean, not that it doesn't, all reserves have a benefit, but something like a TRS reserve, it has a benefit, but it doesn't directly benefit the students. Would we like to think about doing something that would directly benefit the students and getting a list together? We do planning every year. There's a 5-year facilities review that the construction steering committee does, which is a list of what has to be done. And then it's updated every year. We do know there are long-term projects, and we also know that our ability to use the repair reserve, as evidenced by the electrical panel and the sinkhole, is very limited, because we can fix the sinkhole, but we can't fix the other with the repair reserve, but we can't fix the other 2 drainage areas that need new caps as well, that are potentially going to be a problem down the road. So that we have to come up with the money either through insurance or out of pocket. And I could go on and on about the list of things that are looming, that I'm concerned that will not be able to fit into a budget, that are uncovered by the bond or the existing capital reserve.
So it's a good question, and Marion's right, it came up in construction steering. Typically for new business, we would, set it for a future agenda. But I think there is some time sensitivity here in terms of getting this together. Marianne rightly raised in construction steering that you don't want this to be slapdash in any way. And if we were going to go ahead and do something, we would want to make sure it had as much time as possible to be able to put it together. So I don't think it would be bad to hear from trustees about what I think are kind of two separate questions, which is number one, do we have interest in having construction steering report back about projects that are essentially identified or highlighted as being in the administration and in the committee's perspective as a whole as most urgent, and then the suitability of that for a capital reserve proposition on the ballot this year. So I don't want to spring it on folks, but I think we should have some initial conversation about it tonight, because time-wise, there is only so much time.
I think it's a reasonable proposal. I mean, we're at the point now where you don't want to get into the situation where it's dire in terms of what we need to do. So I think it would be a good idea to look at a list and prioritize the list and then see how we can move forward.
Other trustees?
I'm sorry, Sarah, you were raising your
No,
hand.
That's right, Maria,
Maria, please,
you're
go
in.
ahead. You're in.
If I understood Rich correctly, then I'm piggybacking on his point, but I'm not sure. I do think it's always recommended and good practice, right, to be considering long-range planning and knowing what the critical projects are that are coming up. So I'm certainly liking the idea that there be, that there be a sort of working list and that it happens sooner rather than later. I'm definitely concerned about making the leap now about putting out another capital reserve proposal. I think the defeat of last year's, when all of these points were exactly the same last year, it was, quite a lesson of, I'm sort of wanting to concentrate on making sure that we have a really robust, passable budget that is supported by great education. I'm excited that, the budget advisory council, and I think I just got the name of it wrong, but that Tom is putting together with Olivia is coming to fruition very soon. I want to make a plug right now that people get their applications in. I think they're due tomorrow, aren't they? But it seems to me that I'm a little concerned about repeating the mistakes of last year. So I'm reluctant to go right away to, we need another capital reserve. We do need a capital reserve. We needed it last year, and it's always a good idea, and it doesn't cost any extra money to the taxpayers. So I think, it's the right thing to do. I'm just a little bit hesitant about actually proposing it this year.
I do want to address that though, Maria. I do think there were a couple of problems with that
Hold
capital
on,
reserve.
wait, Marion, let's hear from everyone, and then we can come back to discussing rather than going back and forth. Is there, Sarah, you had your hand up before?
Yeah, oh, yes, thank you. So yeah, Maria makes some good points about the timing, and I want it to be rushed and not ideal. But what I was thinking too was that there's no question that the district is always facing a really tremendous list of capital projects that we are going to have to address sooner or later. That's just the nature of our infrastructure. And we absolutely need ways to fund these things. But I also think, given sort of where we are in the calendar this year and what happened with the vote last year, and with, changing, having an interim superintendent, new superintendent coming in, that if we really want to recognize the extent to which our capital projects and our infrastructure are important and pressing issues, this may well be something that the board come July should adopt as a significant goal. to lay out the extent of our infrastructure needs and how we're going to meet all of those needs through a variety of funding sources, and to look at that in a very comprehensive way, and to look at it in a much more deliberate way than trying to figure out how to do it in a compressed time frame now.
Lisa? Sorry, yeah.
So I agree with what Sarah and Maria just said. I do think that everything that was on that capital reserve last year was extremely important. And I think it's very disappointing that it didn't pass. So we could have put money towards those projects, but the community spoke loudly, and it makes me extremely nervous to put something out there like this again. And secondly, I would love to hear from Tom and from the administration about, their feeling about doing something like this.
And I'll weigh in at the appropriate moment. I don't know if all the trustees have spoken yet, but I'd be happy to weigh in on the timing, Lisa, whenever asked.
Okay. We will hear from you. I want to hear from Andrew. I want to give Mary Ann a chance to respond, and I had a couple thoughts. Or, sorry, Andrea, I didn't mean to, I'm not calling on you particularly.
No, it's okay. I like to be called on. I mean, there's so many benefits of reserves, right? None of us can deny that. The district has benefited from the reserves for generations. But I don't think this is the year. I'm very concerned about the complexity of presenting a budget, and then also explaining reserves and what that means and how they get funded. And given what happened last year, I'm just not willing to jeopardize it. And I don't think, let's say we do just a flat budget this year, yes or no, I think we end up with a really good measure of what's going on in the community in terms of their feelings toward the budget. And then going forward, we can look at creating a new reserve and tackling all those other projects that are in the pipe.
Mary Ann?
I don't think the capital reserve was put together well last year. I don't think it was presented well. And I think the lights were a big trigger point on it. It mobilized a group that would not otherwise be opposed to it. And I also think it was primarily, if not exclusively, tailored towards athletics. So it didn't, I think, reach enough of the community. And I think we could do a better job. I don't think the budget passing is contingent on the capital reserve passing, or the capital reserve passing is contingent on the budget passing. And I'm concerned that you're losing an opportunity, that we would be losing an opportunity to actually have a place to put that money, any money that may come in, to work, which will actually directly impact students. Because you do not have a reserve set up now that will actively impact students the way a new athletic field would impact students. And I think it would be worth at least getting a list from construction steering as to what needs to be done. And what we see at the end of the useful life. I think that's information we should have, that every trustee should have. And I don't think we have ever really had a full handle on that. I think that was part of the reason we were surprised, at least I was surprised, by the capital reserve coming up last year and the timing of it and what was included. And I had voiced some concerns about what was included and what was not included. And I think you have, you potentially have money coming in here that's recoverable. And it's not insignificant if we even get a portion of the money that we spent on COVID-related expenses from FEMA. That could be a lot of money that could be working. And it wouldn't hurt to at least take a look at the list, see what it is, so you have an understanding of what it is, and then make a determination about a capital reserve.
Dr. Dolan? Did you have
Yeah, needless to say, Olivia and I will do whatever we're directed to do by the board. And the collection of a list is not a bad idea. You know, a list of ideas on things that need to get done around the district, not a bad idea at all to get the wheels spinning. But I have to confess, it's January 6th. I am so afraid that it would be a slapdash effort to put something together to be contiguous with this budget vote. The timing is not great. The idea is a good one. The timing isn't great. And I for example, I know in the last time I attempted such a feat was in Great Neck, a district contiguous to ours. We began the effort in July, and I know that the vote was on February 14th. We chose Valentine's Day very specifically because we wanted to describe it as a gift to the community, and it was successful and it passed. But I can remember as early as the opening of school in September, being out there talking to people about the projects that we were talking about, and then spending a lot of time doing it. It worries me to begin to collect. It does not worry me to begin to collect the list. It would worry me to begin to collect the list with the idea of accomplishing this spring. And I think someone else also mentioned it. I'm not abdicating any responsibility, and I think I've shown I'm a hard worker here, but I think you'd want your new superintendent involved in this. It seems like the kind of thing that a person could put their mark on, and hopefully an early victory. So those are my thoughts are temporal in nature mostly.
Thank you, everyone. I guess I will share some of my thoughts. I agree with Dr. Dolan and with Mary Ann that compiling the list of those things needs to be done, is a tool this board needs. I think we've seen pieces of it. We've seen all the pieces of it, but to put them in one place and to really have an understanding of what that is. I know when my first year on the board was Dr. Melnick's last year on the board, and there was an aborted attempt to have what became known either affectionately or unaffectionately, depending on your perspective, as the bathroom bond, where it was going to be a lot of money to fix a lot of bathrooms around the community. And that didn't seem really like, not that that's not necessary, of course, but that didn't seem like the best use of our resources per se. So at the last minute, we came through and looked at other needs of the district, and what was cobbled together were certainly things that would have been necessary and would have been beneficial, but it didn't seem to be the most thorough process. So I think everyone at that point took a step back and said, let's hold on, let's start fresh with a new superintendent. And that became the seeds of the bond that was a $40 million capital investment, 39.7, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure Olivia can go a lot more digits than I can on that. But we looked at all different needs, and we were in those meetings. Mary Ann and Sarah and I were on construction steering and came to the board, and we honed and we added and we subtracted and we looked at and we recosted, and we came up with, while still not perfect per se, and certainly not necessarily thrilling to everyone, created a package that was certainly important, necessary, and passed by strong numbers by this community. So I think the argument that Tom made about letting a new superintendent make this a new permanent superintendent, make this part of what they're doing, is compelling. I think the idea that other trustees have made about the messaging on this particular election, I think there is a sense in this board that the messaging that didn't come from this board, but the messaging that was out there in this community, which confused and conflated the capital reserve with the bond, with the, we all drive around here, we all saw the signs, we all know what the messaging was here. I don't particularly feel that the anti-capital reserve movement, so to speak, was about informing the public or was accurate, quite frankly, but it was compelling to a lot of people, and we saw it. It the lights, Marianne very accurately said, have been a flashpoint in this community for a very long time, a huge flashpoint. And I understand that. And that certainly was a big factor. But I think the general messaging of why we have reserves, what the benefit of reserves are, why our district uses them wisely, that we are in the middle of the pack of Nassau County comparable school districts in our use of reserves, and how they help us, how they help our children, how they keep our costs down, how they give us better credit rating. Those are messages that I would like to see better promoted in this community without really having the concerns we do now about the passability of a budget. This is still, think back, almost a year ago, the stress everyone felt, the contentiousness we all felt. I don't think that society has gotten better since then. And so to ask the community to come together and give us a verdict on the funding of this district long-term, I think that simplicity makes more sense, while also running a parallel track. So Marianne, if we can go into a new full-time permanent superintendent, with a presentation of these are the issues, the funding issues the district is going to be facing, that this board with its knowledge has been able to pass on to next year's board, whether it's these people or other people, but going forward, will be a gift to the 2022-2023 year. But to me, it seems a little premature to do it now in this election. And I agree with Tom that the timing is already pretty tight.
Well, I think we really need to get that list going, because this is my concern.
Mm-hmm.
We did not have that information on the last capital reserve. It was presented to us as a package. It wasn't presented early in the process. It was presented very late. And there was no sense as to why those particular projects were picked, I think for the board or for the community. And I think what we have suffered from in my almost 30 years in this district, and certainly in my 9 years on the board, is I don't think we've had a complete picture. I don't even think we had a complete picture in the bond process, because no one even mentioned in forming the $40 million bond that the track was at the end of its useful life. I mean, honestly, if someone had said in construction theory, oh, by the way, the track is at the end of its useful life, you might have said, oh, gee, that would be a really good thing to put in the bond, right? So I think when we're putting together bonds and capital reserves without a board having the universe at its disposal and an understanding of why we're selecting those projects. Now you can start that process now, and we've had votes on reserves or bonds in December. We could have it at another time. Generally, we do the bond vote at a different time, but we do try and tie in the capital reserve to the budget cycle. I am concerned if you pass on the opportunity of getting at least some essential projects in the capital reserve this year, that you will lose the opportunity to fund, I think, some really important projects. Obviously, if the whole board doesn't feel that way, if it will be too much pressure on the administration, I'm not going to push it. But I will tell you that I think that preliminary work cannot start soon enough. And it wouldn't hurt in going out to the community and selling a budget to say that there is no extra money and we've got a list this long to do somewhere along the line, and I don't know how that's going to fit into a budget, right? I mean, you could start if you're educating people on the budget, you could start educating them on a capital reserve. I
don't wanna
don't
jump in,
think
but
they're exclusive.
I agree with everything you said. I think having the universe that you said, seeing the whole thing, not that it's presented to us. Don't tell me, oh, this is what my special today is. Give us the whole menu so we can see what all of our choices are.
Right, and I don't really think we had the opportunity on the last capital reserve. I don't. And I don't even think we even had the board had the full opportunity on the bond. It was sort of like, you could have this or you could have that, like you could have vanilla or you could have chocolate ice cream for dessert. Without any context of what was driving the choices.
Maria, is your mic off?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I really, I like, to me, this is sort of, the discussion has kind of come full circle. I think there's no argument that having the list is critical, and it's kind of amazing that we've never thought of this before, right? That it hasn't been done before, or if it has, it's maybe been done by too many disparate groups and never been, pulled together into one. I think that there's no argument here that the list should be started, but I actually think it would be even a further benefit in terms of the time argument. Yeah, let's start it now, so we actually do a really good job on it once we've got a new superintendent and the time feels right to present it.
And I think I agree. I think it's also important to say, we do have the building conditions report, and we start these bonds, the administration goes through and every department makes their presentation about what they think they need. So it's not that information hasn't been compiled or that we don't see it, but I think that starting from in thinking about connecting those facilities to how we're going to fund throughout the budget process, I think is something that needs to be reinvigorated. And I think, as has been said, I don't even know by whom anymore, but probably by multiple people, is a hugely important part of the community education piece of this, that if we do it transparently, people can understand, oh, this is not necessarily an example, I'm just throwing it out there, but we have a roof that is going to be at the end of its useful life in 3 years, and that's going to cost X hundred thousands of dollars. This is why you can't pay for that in a regular budget, but this is other funding mechanisms that are out there. Andrea, did you have your hand raised? Oh, sorry. Now I'm calling on you. You're not ready. Sorry.
I have to say, I had a bug on my hair. That's what you saw. I threw it off.
The squares are small. I'm using the small computer now. Sarah?
I will say, I do think there's a communication piece in that people don't have a good sense of how many projects and priorities groups like the construction steering committee are juggling all the time. And likewise, people generally don't have a good sense of how many projects are actively in play right now, right? How many things we're actively fixing. So I don't doubt at all that in the creation of the list, there's opportunities to communicate much better on these issues.
Other thoughts on this before we move on to other new business?
Dave, if I could just, I am so sorry that I didn't mention the building survey, the building condition survey. That's the critical document from which we would start to look at. And then I think it could be augmented by the construction steering committee and maybe others. So I'm sorry I didn't mention that, but again, like you said, I don't want anybody to think that we don't know what needs to be done. We do have a sense, we do have a plan. We would probably start from that document. So thanks for bringing that up.
I did mention the building condition surveys, Tom, in the very beginning, and that we update it. We do it every 5 years and we update it annually. But every 5 years, a new building condition survey is created. That would be the starting point, but I'm thinking more broadly than just a building condition survey. I'm thinking about other projects that might not necessarily be included in the building condition surveys, as well as those included in the building condition survey. I mean, you may have other ideas that you need to do for programs, right? Infrastructures that would support programs. I mean, I just don't feel like that the board has ever had the complete universe when doing it. So I think it's important not only that the board understands what's out there, but that the community understands what's out there and what's at stake. And I am concerned. I think we're all concerned about the budget passing. Who wouldn't be concerned about the budget passing, right? After last year. But I am also concerned about a track and field potentially failing somewhere down the road, and we've done nothing to address funding that issue. I am concerned about those things. You want to have funding in place to support the successful athletic programs we've had. You want to have the funding in place to support our fine and performing arts, our math, our science, all those things. So I don't want to, I want to keep this on people's radar because I feel like we don't look at it consistently or holistically.
And we talk about the universe is vast. It's not just what we have right here, but for example, you talk about the current turf field. There has been a discussion of a second turf field. I'm not promoting that. I'm not saying it's a good idea or a bad idea, but even potential things are part of that universe. And so a question of what we have, the condition of them, what direction you want to go is something that we should have the entire picture. Although as Tom said, and as I know Marianne agrees as well, if John Hall is watching this, we are all appreciative of the work you do. We know you know these buildings with your eyes closed, and that report is certainly a very helpful tool. Other thoughts on this before we? So the administration has heard us. We know that we want to begin that process as something that, at least using the resources we have now. I don't know the degree to which. We have a lot on our plate right now. I don't know the degree to which it sounds like the board has not really expressed a specific rush on this, unless I'm mishearing. But it is something that is important to us. So I don't know, Tom, why don't we? Yeah, Marie, just want to let's say. So my suggestion would be to Tom that we don't need an answer right now. This is new business. We weren't prepared for this. It was a very thorough discussion which we had. Let's breathe on it. Tom, you can let it percolate and kind of maybe come back with some thoughts about it in the near future.
Will do, but I'm going to warn you. I'm probably going to I haven't looked at the day of the week yet, but I'm going to tell the board maybe they should look at February 14th. It worked.
Okay. Good. All right. Thank you. Is there other new business? Lisa, then Sarah.
Oh, sorry, Lisa.
Well, I know there's nothing going on here, so you probably have so much time on your hands. But I'm sorry. I know how crazy and insane the past few weeks are, but I believe that the calendar for next year is usually proposed around now, like a skeleton calendar. And I was just wondering if you had an update on that.
I do, and I have a calendar that I'll be happy to share with the board next week, and hopefully place on the January 20th agenda for approval. It's a tough calendar in some ways, and in some ways it's a little bit better than this year's. But I will have that to the board. We're not in tomorrow. I will have the board on Monday. We have a draft ready to go.
That's exciting. Thank you, Lisa. Sarah?
Yes. So Tom gave us a memo in the board update about a plan to end our current program of early/double accelerated math 6. I think that's how we're calling it. And he said that if there were questions that we should bring them up in new business. So it feels a little bit of an awkward format to discuss it under new business, but if we have questions, it seems like the time to bring them up.
Sarah, if you don't mind, and I'm going to just
please
very briefly, and then I'll back to you. I think that this is new business. It makes sense. Tom gave us the backup. I think it's a good time to ask questions. We have some of our administrators here, Amy and Dan. I assume you're here to hear this. But I want to also caution the board probably would like to weigh in and may not have had a chance to do that as well in full. So why don't we use this as an opportunity to kind of pose questions, have Amy and Dan hear them, And then maybe, I know we have a very full agenda for January 20th. But I think we could probably set aside some time for the board to discuss and to have these questions ready at that time. So let's look at this as more of a good time to pose those questions, and then we'll follow up at our next meeting and have a discussion about it.
That seems very reasonable. Tom indicated in his memo that that timeframe was in fact quite tight. About making, talking to people about classes for the next year. That I could have misinterpreted that, but,
Well, I don't know,
but
Tom, is that-
absolutely. I have only questions.
If we postpone or I don't think the board is prepared to make a curriculum, even a relatively small curriculum change like this now, and saying that it's too late to change. So I think questions now and discussion the 20th, I would hope we would have the breathing space to be able to do that.
I understand what you're saying, Dave and Sarah, and we're gonna have to create the breathing space, and we'll figure out how to do that. If there are questions, my intent tonight was to hear them out, and we can report back on the 20th.
Thank you. All right, Sarah, sorry.
No, thank you. No, that was great. Thank you. I appreciate it. So, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for looking at the program, because this is something, right, that we've been doing for 3 or 4 years. And so it's entirely appropriate, right, to like we've been doing with this extensive IB analysis, it's time to look at it and to decide if this is something that's working for us or not. So thank you for putting in the time to look at this. So there's some stuff that's very exciting about the plan, in that we're talking about we can now add linear algebra at the high school, which would be just this huge opportunity for a lot of kids. So my question there was, and it's really informed by this conversations we've been having around the AP and IB discussions too, is that schedules at the for high school students can be sort of notoriously tight, right? We've got a significant percentage of students who don't have a lunch period, for example. And so part of this plan to get rid of the double acceleration in the middle school is these really interesting, innovative ways to add places where kids could double up on math in the high school, and ways that we can add linear algebra that would benefit the double accelerated students, but also other students in the future. And I wanted to know if, given how tight student schedules can be, if we had an estimate of how many students would likely be able to take linear algebra in this plan that we've come up with, or do we have any sample schedules of what students path through high school would like if they were to double up on math, right? Because a lot of times when we're talking about students' plans in the high school, we present these various schedules about this is what would look like if you were an IB diploma candidate, this is what it would look like if you were this. And given that we've got, what is it, 25% of kids who don't have lunch, what are the trade-offs? How many kids would really be taking these paths, etc.? That's my question.
Okay.
Maybe you want me to talk a little bit about the scheduling, or are we not supposed to answer the questions tonight? Or
I'm not clear with the framing that we had before that. Do we want to ask, and do we want them to answer questions, or we just want to put the questions out?
Because I can definitely look into a piece of your question was the percent of students that don't have a lunch period. I ran a report today and it came back at 10%. I ran it late in the afternoon, and I'd like to get a clearer number on that and actually work with the counselors on going through schedules, because I ran something in Infinite Campus. I just want to make sure I'm giving correct information. So I can definitely get back to you with that.
Yeah, just to clarify,
full sample schedules for you as well.
I'm sorry, Dan, just to clarify for one. So my thought would be, I'm thinking in real time here, is if you have an answer off the cuff and you know it exactly and it's down pat, that's fine, but you should not be expected to have an answer to questions that, in this kind of late night format. So I think that digesting the question is absolutely fine for a follow-up.
Yeah, and then we do have students who, and Amy and I spoke about this today, we have students who double in math and they'll take AP statistics and calculus senior year. So that would be, you know, if they were taking linear algebra and Calc BC senior year, you know, that can certainly happen. We do have some 9th and 10th graders who are doubling in geometry and algebra 2 currently, or algebra 2 and, you know, and another math course. So there are opportunities for that to happen.
Yes. I wanted to know if we had any feedback from students who were currently in these early acceleration classes.
So right now we don't have student feedback other than anecdotal on either students who are in the classes or students who were not in the classes. I think all of those perspectives are really important to note in this process. I think one population of students that I'm particularly interested in looking at are students who strive to be a part of a cohort, but perhaps were not quite ready at the time, and how they needed to manage their feelings going forward as well. So I think there are a lot of different demographics here that are worth hearing from.
Sarah, did you have a question? I know Mary.
Yeah, I would just,
And then
a big piece of it I wanted to say was like, I really appreciated in the analysis that we got the equity piece that we did, that you guys did. And I was wondering if you looked at, from an equity analysis, if you looked at other aspects besides gender. Did you look at like disability status, free reduced lunch, English language learners, any other lens there? I can't tell if they're responding. My screen is frozen on them.
Oh, Amy looked frozen, and now she is.
And now she's gone. So I'll just put out all those questions then, since Amy is gone.
I certainly heard. Yeah, and I heard the question, Sarah, and I will follow up with Amy. I don't know the degree to which we've analyzed all of those lenses that you listed, but we could do that. I know
Or
she did do
any,
gender.
I'm
but
just
I don't know
saying
if the others.
she presented gender, but like if we want to discuss equity, I don't want to just like pick one lens to look at. I'd like to look at
One
more.
criteria. Yep.
Right. But so, and
Got
with
it.
regard to the gender lens, I'm extremely interested in what that looked like before we had the formal program. When we had a couple of kids every year who somehow ended up in the double accelerated program, what that gender ratio looked like, because I think it was quite different. And likewise, we got the analysis of the gender equity lens for kids that actually decided to take the class versus what the gender ratio looks like for kids that were could take the class, right? When they did the analysis through the program, who was eligible to take the class versus who actually decided to enroll in the class. Because those seem to me to be very different numbers. But these are my questions.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna go Mary Ann and then Maria. Sorry, you're good? All right, Mary Ann, Maria, and then Andrea, and then we'll rejigger. I can only do 3 at a time.
All right, the screen froze because Sarah scared you. I just wanted to piggyback on her questions. She's getting where I was going on the number of students who participate. I'd be interested to know the number of students who are currently participating in the double acceleration program as it is currently crafted. And there are a lot of different options. And I have to confess, I read it quickly, didn't have a lot of time this week, but it looked to me there were a lot of different combinations you could do throughout the career. And I'm wondering, do you have an idea of the scope of student participation and the increase in participation based upon those different permutations without sort of double counting kids that are already doing some form of double acceleration? How many more kids how many more students would benefit by changing the program? Do you anticipate? Obviously, I'm not holding you to this. It's not, Caesar's Palace, but how many more kids would benefit from the change in the formatting?
Okay. Tom?
Sorry, I'm trying to get back in. I don't know if Amy's back or not, but I'm certainly taking notes on this. And between me, Chris, Amy, and Dan, we'll get all these questions written down and have data for the 20th.
Okay.
And I had one more question.
Sure, go for it.
Staffing. How are we staffing these courses? And what kind of additional professional development will we need for our current staff? Will we need to hire additional staff? I know part of it is anticipated with work with universities and colleges locally, but are we going to have to hire additional staffing for this program? And if so, what do you anticipate the staffing needs will be?
Thank you. Maria?
Thank you. Let's see, I had a couple of comments and a couple of questions, and definitely don't expect answers tonight. I've actually first, and I kind of hope Amy gets a chance to watch this piece of the video so she hears all the questions herself. Although I know they're being beautifully transcribed by Tom. But it's such a well-written document. It's incredibly persuasive, although I definitely, as often happens with these academic pieces that are so beautifully produced by our faculty, I never feel like I have enough time to absorb. And Amy has cited a bunch of references in here too that I'd like to go, sort of delve into some of the pieces that she's used to build her case here. My daughter is actually in the current double accelerated class, although her entry into it was a long, painful decision for the family. We were not at all sure that we wanted her in it. She ultimately decided she thought it would be good to do it, and she was in a good position to do it. She was deemed eligible, and she's doing okay. She's doing well in it and enjoying it. So one question I have, just from that personal perspective, but also more broadly for everyone else, is how to hear it presented, how these kids who are currently in the program will be affected by the change. Another question that was actually mostly covered by Sarah, but maybe it's more of a comment. I would like to just discuss a little bit more. And again, I'm coming at this as a parent of a kid who hasn't made it to high school yet, right? She's in 6th grade. And so I haven't paid a lot of attention yet to the high school experience, other than, celebrating the incredible successes that we have there all the time. But I do keep hearing this issue of how tight the schedules get, and the kids, how they end up giving up lunch in order to fit in all the things they want to do. And I think this is an embarrassment of riches in the best possible way, right? That we are such a district that can offer so much to our students. And I like that because I want my daughter to see her high school experience as a time to explore. I'm actually not looking for her to know exactly what she wants to do when she enters college. And I want her to have, from my perspective, that sense of, being college ready has to do also with the idea of the liberal arts education starting in high school, right? And having her explore as many things as she can. And yet at the same time, not creating so many stresses that it ends up being, we're overloading her too much. I'm really just I'm really just expressing my concern as a parent and looking for a conversation on this topic. And this particular document really, I think, brings it home for me. The last thing I wanted to say was just, again, actually, I'm really grateful for the extra time. It did, although I think we did get this document on Monday, I just, I never feel like I have enough time to really grasp everything that the writer is giving me. So I'm grateful that I will have time to go back, catch every word now, and look into all of the links. I hope that the discussion on the 20th will be long enough that we can ask more questions at that time. Thanks again for hanging in there, Dan and Amy, tonight.
Thanks. Andrea?
Sure. Thank you. It was a very interesting document to read. I do have several questions and several things I'd like you to take another look at. One of the main sort of takeaways, or one of the theses of your I guess of why you want to remove the early acceleration program, are some statements you made about tracking. And you cite this RUI meta-analysis, which I actually went back and read. And I think we need to look at it again. In the document, I guess you argued that detracking improved outcomes in all ability groups. But actually, if you read the meta-analysis, it argues that the detracking only helps students who are in the low ability group, and it has no effect on the average and high ability students. So I think it's important that we really ask ourselves, if we remove the early acceleration program, which students are we trying to address here? My thought is we're trying to provide a better academic outcome for these students who have high ability in math. And according to that RUI meta-analysis, they will not be served by the detracking. Also, there might be better meta-analyses as well, because that looked at 15 studies that spanned the 70s to 2006, and Common Core was introduced in 2009. So part of my concern is that the studies that were included might not really generalize to what education looks like today. The meta-analysis also was not specific to math. There were social studies that were included in it. There were only 4 experimental studies that were included, and not all of them were related to math. So there might be another meta-analysis that's more recent, or maybe just another study that's more specific to what we're trying to do here. But I do want to emphasize that the point of that article is not that detracking helps all students. It just showed, it did not show a detrimental effect to average and high ability students. I also took a look at the John Hattie research that was cited. I'm assuming you're looking at the 2020 visible learning data. Yeah, so in the article, it talks about tracking having a 0 effect size, which is not really accurate, because if you go to the visible learning information that Hattie produces, he presents detracking and tracking, and actually he shows that the effect size for tracking is higher than detracking, suggesting that there's a greater positive effect for tracking in the whole school population than detracking. So I just lost my light here. And then also Hattie presents information on acceleration versus enrichment. So another thesis of or another rationale, I guess, for why you're interested in removing the double acceleration program has to do with, I guess, the claim that enrichment is more effective than acceleration, but that's actually not what the research shows for high ability students. And John Hattie in 2020, in that same visible learning effect size listing, shows that the acceleration programs have an effect size of 0.68, where the enrichment has a 0.53. So he actually argues that for high ability students, they have higher student outcomes. Actually, the effect size is pretty high for acceleration programs. So I think if you come back to the board, we have to have a better sense of who are we trying to help here? Because if we're looking at, let's say, the top 30% of math performing students, their needs might be very different than if we're trying to reach the top 5% or top 10% of math performing students. And we know that sometimes these high ability programs, if they're trying to capture as many students as possible, you actually fail the students who are the ones who really need it the most, because their needs are so different. And that makes sense, because if you think of like a bell curve model, right? Like the bottom 1% wouldn't be served the same way, wouldn't be served in a general education program as the top 1% would. So if you could take a look at that research again, I think that would be helpful. I also, another question I had was how we identify these students. I know you talked about sort of like multiple metrics that are used. I want to make sure that that there's a clear understanding that the COGATs and group IQ screeners all come with lots of problems, that the research shows like students who are twice exceptional and students who are highly gifted perform have underestimate scores on those. So I think in the past, when you identified these students, there was a cutoff score. So I'm curious like how we would identify them going forward if we kept a double acceleration program. Here, I know I had a lot of questions, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the identification that is kind of the last few years, that has been the thing we've been working with. And I just think that's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, so because the idea is you really, I think first you have to ask the research question, who are we trying to serve here, right? Because and I understand you're looking at it from an equity perspective, but there isn't an equity perspective that's overlooked. If you take the top mathematically gifted students and you just provide enrichment that does not really meet their needs, those students have major social emotional problems when they're in a classroom that is not serving their needs. So I want to make sure that like gifted research is considered in the development of this program, because we know if intellectual needs are not met in the classroom, these students underperform, they're disengaged, and often then you see behavioral problems and emotional problems. Sorry, I had a lot to say.
So I don't think that is respondable tonight, but I think that's good to lay that out there. Are there other thoughts on this topic before we Rich?
Yeah, I do really want to spend some more time digesting this, but I'm just looking at it in terms of logistical piece too, because although it says it's going to quote unquote de-stress kids, I don't see that happening based upon the layout of it and the current situation in terms of the kids in the high school particularly the high performing kids, because they're stressed already. And to me, this looks like it's going to be an added burden to them. And again, I could be wrong. I really want to look it over more carefully. But based upon my previous experience, I don't see it serving that purpose. I think it's going to be more stressful. So I really would like to look it over again. And again, in isolation, it looks great. But when you integrate it with the overall program, I think it's going to be problematic.
Now I'm on mute. I did not have anything to add myself, so I think we, Tom, I don't know if you have any ink
No.
left in your pen, but
No, I got 3 pages of questions. They're good
Okay.
ones. I'm sorry I didn't give people enough time, but to the people who had a chance to look at it, I'm certainly very impressed by the depth with which you've looked at it. And we will return on the 20th to continue the discussion.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and Amy, I have not, I read it, but I need to read it again, but certainly it was very well crafted. I thank you for putting it together, and a lot of thought went into it, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you're making the time for the discussion. I think it's important. I think it's important that it's transparent. And I know how much everybody here cares so much about our kids, our instruction, our curriculum. So I think it's a discussion worth having. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. On that note, I will ask if there's other new business. Okay, on that note, I will see there we have it, folks. I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Marianne? Okay, all in favor of moving on with our night? All right, cheers, everyone. Happy New Year again. Thank you.
Happy New Year, healthy New Year to everyone, and enjoy tomorrow's snow day in whatever way you want to enjoy tomorrow's snow day.
Happy and healthy.
Take care.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Thank you.